The rain was coming down in sheets that night, pounding against the windows of New Orleans City Hall like a warning from the heavens. Inside, behind those tall glass doors, the meeting room glowed with soft yellow light. But what was happening inside was anything but bright. Mayor Ray Nagin stood at the head of the long oak table, a folded envelope clutched in his hand. His face was calm, but his fingers twitched nervously. Across from him, a man in a gray suit leaned forward with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You take care of the contracts," the man said, sliding a second envelope across the table. "And we'll take care of you." The sound of that envelope scraping across the wood seemed louder than the thunder outside. Nagin hesitated for just a moment, then reached out. And that was the moment it all began. The deal that would unravel the city's trust and pull everyone into the muck of corruption that had been hiding beneath the jazz, the parades, and the sweet scent of beignets. What no one knew yet, what no one could have imagined, was that this single act of greed would open the door to something even darker. Because deep in the Louisiana bayous, bodies were beginning to surface. And while the politicians fought to cover their tracks in the city, someone or something was hunting in the swamps. The camera of fate had just started to roll. But who was really pulling the strings? Months before that stormy night, life in New Orleans had its usual rhythm. Street musicians played along Royal Street, tourists snapped photos in the French Quarter, and the smell of gumbo drifted from corner restaurants. But beneath the music and laughter, whispers were spreading about secret payments, about friends in high places, about the mayor himself. It started small. A construction company from Baton Rouge, a few suspicious contracts, a rumor of bribes exchanged for rebuilding deals after Hurricane Katrina. People wanted to believe it wasn't true. After all, Mayor Nagin had been the face of recovery, the man on television promising to rebuild the city stronger than ever. But in the shadows, things weren't adding up. City worker Denise Holloway first noticed it when she was processing permit paperwork. Some forms came signed before they were even filed. Some companies got approvals overnight while others waited months. And when she asked questions, she was told to let it go. One evening, as she was leaving her office, Denise saw two black cars parked outside City Hall. Men in suits were talking quietly, and one of them carried a briefcase. The next morning, that same briefcase appeared in the mayor's office. She thought about reporting it, but then she remembered the stories. The last man who had spoken out, a journalist named Carl Dupree, had vanished on his way home from Baton Rouge. His car was found abandoned near the bayou, driver's door open, radio still playing. So Denise stayed silent. But silence couldn't stop what was coming. In Iberia Parish, about 2 hours west of New Orleans, a fisherman named Louis Beau Landry was casting nets one misty morning when his boat hit something heavy in the water. Thinking it was driftwood, he leaned over to push it aside until he saw the pale hand floating beneath the surface. The news spread fast. The body of a young woman, barely recognizable, was pulled from the bayou that morning. Then another. Then another. Over the next 4 years, between 2005 and 2009, 8 women would be found in similar conditions, all dumped in the dark waters of Louisiana's swamps. Locals started calling it the Jeff Davis 8. The sheriff's department said they were investigating. But whispers grew louder, rumors that local deputies might be involved, that drugs, bribes, and politics were tangled together in one dirty knot. And at the center of it all? Money. The kind of money that moved between city officials, law enforcement, and businessmen who knew how to make things disappear. Back in New Orleans, Mayor Nagin's administration continued smiling for cameras. But behind closed doors, investigators from the FBI had started collecting evidence. They followed the money trails, the phone calls, the meetings in dark restaurants. The truth was starting to surface like those bodies in the bayou, slowly, horribly, and too late to save anyone. Denise couldn't sleep anymore. The guilt was eating at her. Every night, she saw the news reports about the bayou murders. Every morning, she walked past the mayor's office, hearing laughter from behind the door. One day, she made a choice. She opened her email and typed a message. To Federal Bureau of Investigation. Subject: Corruption in New Orleans City Hall. I have information. Please contact me privately. She hesitated before pressing send, her hand trembling. Outside her window, the rain began to fall again, just like that night in City Hall. She didn't know it yet, but that email would set off a chain of events that would shake Louisiana politics to its core and place her in terrible danger. Because someone was watching. That night, as she walked to her car in the City Hall parking lot, she noticed something strange. Her tires looked slashed. Then she saw a shadow move behind a column. "Hello," she called out softly. No answer. Only the dripping of water from the roof. She hurried back toward the door, but it was locked. She turned, heart racing. And there he was, a man in a raincoat, standing just far enough that she couldn't see his face, holding an umbrella. He didn't move,
Didn't speak.
just watched. The sound of the rain seemed to fade until she could hear only her own heartbeat. "Who are you?" she whispered. The man tilted his head slightly, then turned and walked into the darkness of the street. Denise ran to her car and drove off, not noticing the small black car that pulled out behind her. The corruption, the killings, the fear, it was all connected. Somewhere between the polished marble halls of power and the muddy waters of the bayou, someone was pulling every string. And as the investigation grew, so did the danger. The FBI was closing in on City Hall. Reporters were digging deeper into the Iberia Parish murders. And someone, somewhere, was growing desperate to keep their secrets buried. But the question remained, who was really in control? And what would they do next to keep the truth from coming out? The storm that began with one bribe was about to sweep across Louisiana, and no one, not even the mayor himself, would escape untouched. As lightning flashed over the Mississippi River, a phone rang in the dark. "Did you handle it?" a voice asked. "Yes," another voice replied quietly. "She won't talk again." Thunder rolled, and somewhere in the bayou, another body rose to the surface. The sound of thunder rolled over the Louisiana swamps like a warning no one could ignore. Rain poured from the black sky, drumming against the metal roofs of police boats as they glided through the bayou. Flashlights cut through the mist, their beams landing on something floating near the reeds. Another body. Deputy Carter stared in silence as officers lifted the pale figure from the water. The air smelled of mud and rot. "That's number 9, he whispered. 9 bodies, and still no answers. Sheriff Landry wiped the rain from his face. "You ever get the feeling someone's laughing at us, Carter?" From the darkness beyond the boat, a frog croaked once, then silence fell again. The next morning, news of the discovery spread across Louisiana. Another body found in Iberia Parish Bayou blared across television screens. But inside New Orleans City Hall, the mayor's office remained quiet. Too quiet. Ray Nagin sat alone behind his desk, the same desk where he'd once taken that first envelope. The blinds were closed. His phone buzzed with another call he didn't want to answer. The FBI had already questioned 2 of his former aides. One had cracked. The investigation was getting too close. He picked up the phone, his voice low. "We need to clean this up," he said. "Already in motion," a man replied. "But there's a problem. Someone's been talking." "Who?" "The clerk. Holloway." Nagin froze. "Handle it." The line went dead. Across town, Denise Holloway sat in her tiny apartment, staring at her half-packed suitcase. She hadn't slept in 2 days. Her last email from the FBI said they wanted her to meet an agent at a cafe near Canal Street. They promised protection. But protection didn't feel real in New Orleans anymore. Not when people were disappearing. She looked out her window and froze. A black car was parked across the street. Same one from City Hall. Same dark windows. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Ms. Holloway," a calm voice said, "this is Agent Reeves with the Bureau. We need you to stay calm. Leave your apartment now. Go to the cafe. Someone will meet you there." "But there's someone outside." "Don't look at them. Just move." Denise grabbed her coat and purse, heart pounding, and ran down the stairs. Rain hit her face as she stepped outside, the street lights flickering. She forced herself to walk quickly but not run. Halfway to the corner, she heard a car door open behind her. Then footsteps. She started to run. Tires screeched. A figure grabbed her arm, pulling her into a side alley. She gasped and tried to scream, but a hand covered her mouth. "Quiet," the man hissed. "I'm with the Bureau." She stopped struggling, eyes wide. The man flashed a badge. "Agent Reeves." He looked around, scanning the street. "They know you're talking. We don't have much time." "Who are they?" she whispered. He looked at her with something like pity. "People a lot higher than you think." At FBI headquarters in Baton Rouge, Agent Michael Reeves and his partner, Agent Ortiz, had been tracking corruption in New Orleans for over a year. They had wiretaps, bank records, and confidential witnesses, all pointing toward bribery in the mayor's office. But every time they got close to making an arrest, someone on the inside tipped off the targets. Now, with the Iberia Parish murders tied to the same money routes used for city bribes, things had gotten complicated. Ortiz tossed a file onto the table. 9 victims, all with some link to the same construction company getting those contracts. "You think this is just a coincidence?" Reeves rubbed his temples.
"No.
"Someone's cleaning up loose ends. And Holloway? She's our key witness. But if they find her before we do..." He didn't finish. Outside, rain beat against the window, the kind of Louisiana storm that never seemed to end. Meanwhile, at a rundown diner off Highway 90, a man named Frank Doucette stirred his coffee nervously. Frank had worked for one of the companies accused of funneling kickback money. He'd been part of the deals, carrying envelopes just like the one the mayor once took. Now he wanted out. A shadow moved across his booth. A woman sat down opposite him without asking. Long brown coat, damp hair, sharp eyes.
"You're late," she said.
"You're FBI?" he whispered. "Something like that," she replied. "You said you had information." Frank looked around the diner. "It's bad. The money, they're not just paying for contracts anymore. They're paying to keep people quiet, to make sure the truth never gets out." "Who's giving the orders?" Frank hesitated. "You won't believe me. Try me." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "It's coming from higher than the mayor. There's someone pulling the strings, a man named Victor LaSalle. Owns half the construction companies in southern Louisiana. He's the one tying the city deals to the murders." The woman frowned. "Victor LaSalle died 2 years ago." Frank swallowed hard. "Then someone's using his name." Before she could ask more, a gunshot cracked through the window. Frank slumped over the table. The woman ducked as glass shattered. Outside, a black sedan sped away into the rain. Back in New Orleans, Mayor Nagin was pacing his office when his phone buzzed again. "It's done," a voice said. "You're sure?" "Positive." He exhaled slowly, staring at the framed photo on his desk, him shaking hands with smiling city leaders at a ribbon-cutting ceremony. To everyone else, it was progress.
But to him, it was a mask.
Behind the mask was rot, and he was starting to feel the walls closing in. He didn't know it yet, but Agent Reeves was on his way to New Orleans with a warrant, a witness, and the truth. Denise sat in the passenger seat of a small rental car, soaked and shivering. Agent Reeves drove fast down the highway, his eyes fixed ahead. "You're safe for now," he said. "We'll get you out of the city tonight." She nodded, staring out the window at the rain-slick road. Then, suddenly, a pair of headlights appeared behind them. Reeves glanced in the mirror. "Hold on." The car behind them sped up. A second later, the sound of gunfire ripped through the rain. Bullets shattered the rear glass. Denise screamed. Reeves swerved off the road, the car spinning before slamming into a ditch. Steam hissed from the hood. "Stay down," he shouted, drawing his gun. But before he could step out, the other car's doors opened. 2 men in dark coats emerged, faces hidden by the storm. Reeves fired once.
Twice.
One man ducked behind the car. The other raised his weapon. And everything went black. When Denise woke up, the rain had stopped. The air smelled like smoke and gasoline. The driver's seat beside her was empty. "Agent Reeves," she whispered. No answer. She pushed open the door and stepped out into the night. The road was deserted. The other car was gone. Only one thing remained, a small, silver badge lying in the mud. She picked it up with trembling hands. That's when she heard footsteps behind her. "Miss Holloway," said a calm voice. She turned and gasped. The man standing there wasn't an agent. He was wearing a city government pin, the same kind worn by the mayor's aides. "You shouldn't have sent that email," he said softly. Lightning flashed. Denise stumbled back, clutching the badge. "Please,
I didn't mean to."
you've seen too much." A car door opened behind him. "Get in," the man ordered. Denise shook her head.
No.
His expression hardened. "You don't have a